Hi there. I wanted to give you a very quick overview of how a Salesforce-based data classification can really be instrumental in your Salesforce data governance journey. So within Salesforce, you now have the ability to apply classification to fields of an object and to apply data categorization. What that means is for every field, you can mark if it is confidential or public or some other such attributes. You can also mark a categorization. Is it for GDPR? Is it for HIPAA? And things like that. And those two things may not seem very powerful, but they can be incredible to act as a catalyst for your Salesforce data governance journey. How do you use them and what can you do with them? That's what these next few minutes are about. So this data governance journey is based on the idea of ABCD, which I'll get into a minute. But with data classification, what you can help your business do is you can ensure that their integrations are managed better. Their integrations are aware of the field that you're pulling in. Is that have a confidential security condition applied to it? Is that a HIPAA sensitive field? And am I pulling it into a non-HIPAA compliant system? Another advantage of this is you can leverage it for retention. You can have retention policies that would wipe out data based on classification or categorization. You can apply data privacy compliance policies for right to be forgotten portability so that any GDPR, CCPA type data requirements can be met with this. Another example of this could be you can now build security into your Apex code. So when your developers are writing code, they can look at classification and take an action based on that. And that way you can make sure that it's not interfering with a without sharing type mode in Apex, where it's like, I've got all the fields on an object, but now you can look at classification and categorization and make sure only the ones that meet a certain threshold are leveraged. So let's see how we can put this into action. So the first step to this is awareness, assessment, and alignment. And what you're really doing here is you're talking to your peers, your tech team, maybe the platform and business owner, but you're not going across the company. You're just talking to a very finite set of people, maybe just your immediate circle of influence. And you're trying to help them visualize the possibilities, much like we talked about some of these use cases, and really validate if this is relevant for your organization. Maybe it's a terrible idea because you have a whole slew of other things that the company cares about today, and maybe this is not important for them. I would like to believe it is important for every organization, but every organization has its own set of priorities. If this makes sense, and in your assessment, this seems like worth pursuing further, then you can continue to raise awareness with a smaller circle. You sell them a roadmap of what kind of things would be relevant, and you align just a group of people, right? Just help them understand this journey of what it entails, the possibilities that they can, and really build on that imagination and validity of the idea itself. So that's on A, awareness, assessment, and alignment. And from that, you get into the B's of this, which is really identifying good business cases. You continue to get that buy-in to actually do some real work around it and build like a really small pilot. And the idea here is how can you validate usefulness very, very quickly? So maybe you say, all right, we are going to apply data classification to 3 objects, account, contact, and lead, for example. And we will try this out with some other third-party product or some internal system to see can we effectively use it. Can my analytics use this data classification? Can my existing integration be smart enough to only pull values into my warehouse where this data classification meets a certain criteria? Can I look at App Exchange products? Like we do data masking, we do data retention, and some of those products are aware of classification. And you may do something really small. The whole point here is just kind of doing a pilot to further validate the usefulness of this for your organization. So once you've done this, again, the audience here does not change. A very limited audience, very small thing. You're thinking of this as hours and weeks and not like months. This is a really tiny pilot that you're doing to validate that, yes, this is worth pursuing further. And if you do, then you try to scale this up. Once you have a confirmation of utility of business value, you now take this to a broader organization. Now you are asking for funding. You're trying to gain consensus with your steering committees. You're going to other Salesforce orgs within your ecosystem. If you're a multi-org enterprise, you're going to your enterprise architecture teams, centralized data governance, enterprise governance teams, and you're trying to align your effort here with data classification to a broader enterprise-wide governance initiative. This is important, and this is where your audience starts to change. You're now going to people who are looking at these things more holistically and who may have a greater say in helping you drive more impact with this, getting this more impetus, getting you more funding. So fundamentally, at this point, you're formalizing this as, yes, this is now a legit project. It runs like other things that we run, and there is a lot more effort that's going to put in. You may be now doing data classification across all your objects, all your fields, across Salesforce org by org by org. You may also be looking at other automation opportunities that can leverage this. You may kickstart a data retention project, a data masking project. You may kickstart a project to invest in updating your existing integrations that are pulling data into warehouses, your analytics and things like that. So basically, we are scaling it up, right? So we started with this idea, validated it, did a little pilot. Now this is where we are scaling it up. And the fourth part of this is to really give business value back to your constituents. So now you're automating business cases that leverage this, the usual suspects that we talked about earlier. And now your data classification based governance becomes a way of life. Your requirement documents ask for this, right? This is more formalized. Your release checklist has this. Your policies are going to enforce based on this. Your security is going to be driven by this. Your integrations are going to be driven by this. So these are the ABCD of data classification based governance journey. I have a little more detail on it, so let me quickly walk you through that as well. So again, same step, awareness, assessment, and alignment. Our question was, will this work for us? You're kind of setting a roadmap. You're raising awareness internally with stakeholders, identifying use cases, align efforts. Very, very usual suspects in this that I've seen are around compliance use cases, around InfoSec guidelines, around industry standards that your company needs to adhere with. If you've had related deficiencies in those areas, if there is manual effort that would be served well from automation opportunities, that is where you want to build your case. This to me is 100% analysis, roadmap selling, and just figuring out if it's worth our time or not. And then again, back to starting small. I'm a huge fan of starting small, validate such tiny few use cases, find a compelling business issue, security, integration, sharing, retention, masking, whatever, kickstart something, do something, right? This contact lead account is my favorite example. There is personal data here, there is data sensitivity in this space. And a lot of these things are not huge efforts. Like literally, you could take an object and apply a data classification on it in a couple of hours. Again, depending on how big your object is. But the intent is the same. Very small, incremental stuff, get some value, make sure this is worth doing. Don't go big bang with this. I've found that a lot of people can't wrap their head around it unless they see some value, and definitely leverage some app exchange platform or some existing solution that can drop benefits. So it's not like you come back and say, look, I have put metadata on 150 fields. That has no business value. But if you could say I put metadata on 150 fields, and in this pilot, my retention policy is using another solution that can look at this metadata and leverage it to enforce these. So that's this. Again, getting more into details of the third. This is where you want an executive buy-in. You want real money to be lined up because the company now gets why this is so vital, right? So you want to, again, get specific use cases, a broader set of use cases for your metadata, and formalize this tagging with some other larger effort. A lot of large and mid-sized companies have data governance effort, and you want at this point to hook your data classification into that effort and make sure there are people allocated to it, from legal, compliance, governance, enterprise architecture, your own subject matter expert, your business folks, and there is a method to the madness for this. Finally, back to realizing business value. You want to automate your compliance policies, risk, security policies. You may have analytics that can run from this, integrations that can run from this. And all of this is now automated. You really want business to drive value out of this, because that is the number one challenge I've always felt when I was in consulting, as in enterprise architecture and governance initiatives. Businesses don't see value. It just seems like there's more PowerPoints, more policies, more stuff that's going to slow them down. And you have to start showing value in your B, C, and D steps here. And on the other hand, you are now internalizing this. You're making this a way of life within your organization. So I love the idea that if you have a requirements document, if you use Jira or something to get user stories, you now have a dedicated section where you're asking, great, you want 10 new fields on contact. What is going to be the data classification? What is going to be the data categorization? Here is the guideline around this so that the business can work with your team and you can drive these out. And similarly, your release process, there is something within release where you look at these and go, okay, this cannot be released, or this is not integration ready because we've not done appropriate sort of things. So anyway, That's the whole point of doing a data classification based governance journey. It's a really great way to abstract away your data model based journey, and using metadata in between, you can ensure that as your data model evolves, as long as classification is applied to it, everything that is connecting to it, be it integration, security, policy enforcement, things like that, all of them can leverage that metadata and use that. And that way, these two things are running independently. They're not blocked by, oh, I'm adding 150 fields. These guys need to know here because they have a say in it. Hope this was useful. Let me know what you think. Thank you so much.